Okay, we have the minutes of the November 25th. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes as mailed?
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We have discussion and approval of the claims.
Move it.
Discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item 3 is Human Resources, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions.
Move it.
I'll pass around the memorandum for signatures.
You do need to vote on
Did we have a motion?
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Anything else? All right.
Would you like me to read this or read it?
I think I can read it. I had this put on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen. It's an invitation to dialogue. During my last 30 years of public service on the board and commissions, I have come to the conclusion that any board functions best when its members have open communication and when work as a team. Excuse me for being a little bit preachy, but I don't mean to be that way. But I think that I've earned the right to make some observations and offer an invitation. I'm not talking about always agreeing that is not possible, and frankly, I think that can be harmful. Leaders sometimes need to disagree and come to final solutions. It's often tedious and messy. That's our democracy. While disagreeing may be healthy, individuals need not to be disagreeable. Members of a team must feel like other team members share common goals, even if the objective is somewhat difficult. Specifically, team members must never feel ambushed or threatened by other elected officials. To that end, I'm proposing, as I leave the board, that there be a mediator appointed to facilitate a focused conversation regarding protocol and problem solving as a team. I envision this to be one of the first steps in attempting to not to have unanimous decisions, but to walk away with meetings knowing that methods and objectives may vary, but each member has a common goal to serve Woodbury County and treated other team members with respect and dignity. The County Board of Supervisors should be models of community adults to interact and deal with serious problems. If we are going to have future leaders understand teaming and the value of public service, we need to begin modeling it now. In short, we need to forget campaigning and begin governing. I'm certainly open to discussion for a possible time and for a mediator. But I believe that we should immediately implement this possibility, ladies and gentlemen. I really seriously believe that within the last 6 to 7 months, we've had not good dialogue on this board, and that's not the way I feel that we should be operating. We should be operating with respect and dialogue among ourselves, open to the public, and I just don't think that's been happening. And I'm going off the board. I think it's a very serious situation. So I open it for discussion.
Well, I agree with Chairman Boykin on this, and I did reach out to the Waite Institute because they have national partners in really workplace culture, bullying. It can be called different things. And initially, I had thought maybe we should do a total county initiative like the Sioux City Schools did. I did reach out to Sioux City Schools as well. After meeting with the Waite folks and their consultants, I guess, came back to the conclusion that really the buck stops with us. and maybe the initiative needs to start at this level. You know, it was 2 years ago that the front page of the Journal was "We must stop bullying, the buck stops with us. You know, we have to be the role models." This community rallied around protecting kids. And I think in order to do that, we have to start the behavior here. And I too am getting comments from the public, many of them, some of them I think like watching it, but because it's entertainment, and it's not the kind of entertainment we want to be providing. Certainly not the role model that I want to be providing. So I agree with this. I think it gets tricky because anything we do will be in the public media. It isn't like when you go to counseling, you get to go in your room and have a private airing of the differences. So there are challenges to do that, but I know every single one of us, I firmly believe that we want to serve our community. We do. We would not take these jobs. We would not put ourselves in the position of what almost seems constant criticism if we didn't care about moving our community forward. So I don't know what the feeling of the board is to move forward. I personally don't know what else to do. I think I can only control my own behavior. If I can have a takeaway on a different way to act, I certainly am willing to look at myself in all of this. But I think I don't want this to filter down to poor culture with our department heads, ultimately with our workers. And I can see that trend happening. And I just think I want to get out in front of it, is where I'm at.
Well, I would agree with everything that you've said. I think that this board over the years, as I said, I've been here over 30 years, and we function very well. I think that as a governmental body in this community, we've gained the respect of the public in the way that we've conducted business. Our county government is probably in better shape than any other county governments in the state of Iowa. And it's been because of that collaboration and relationships that we've had among ourselves. And it just seems to me over the last number of months that it has turned altogether different now. And every time that I come into this courthouse, there seems to be a lot of tension. When I go out of the courthouse, I get a lot of comments from people about how the board functions and that it's not functioning well. And I don't like that to be happening. I've served on other commissions and boards in this community over the last 40-some years, and I can never remember it being like this. As some of you know, I was on the Board of Education for 12 years. During that time, we closed 9 schools in the Sioux City School District, and it was never this contentious during that 12-year period. We did it with dignity and with professionality, and I think that we need to return to that somehow. So I'm offering this invitation. I'd be willing to take part of this and part of this when I'm off the board, because I think it's important enough to this community that we deserve professionals, and we have to act as, I really am a believer in role modeling for our community. That's how our youngsters, that's how our future leaders, I think, look at our community as a whole and say that this is a great place to live, and I want to raise my children in this community based on the leadership at this particular level. It has to start from the top and percolate down. Comments?
Is this, I'm just looking for some specifics, because your letter, Mr. Chairman, indicates or seems to specify elected officials when you say we need to forget campaigning and begin governing, is because what I don't want is another layer of bureaucracy that might diminish the influence of the voters as far as elected officials go. Are you suggesting a specific form of a mediator at taxpayer expense, or an appointee of the board, specifically over the board, or are you talking about department heads? Because I believe we all oppose bullying, and I certainly support your sentiment. I guess I'm just wondering what you envision this mediator, if there's a sort of precedent you were thinking of, or.
Well, I think it has to be an outside mediator. I don't think it can be anyone from the community to look at our situation, because we are unique as far as I'm concerned as a governmental entity. I've never participated on a governmental entity like this before. It's been 30 years of participation. It's very interesting and educational. The city council does not function in this manner at all, because it's got a different structure. The Board of Education has a different structure. This is the only structure, governmental structure, that has 3 or 4 other elected officials. It has department heads. It does not have a city manager or a county manager. We are basically a hands-on administrative body, the County Board of Supervisors. We set policy of course, for our department heads, and I think we set policy sometimes for our elected officials, other elected officials. I know that the other elected officials have some autonomy in a lot of it, and rightfully so. So that kind of a structure is way, way different than other governmental bodies in the community. And I think for us to get an understanding of how that functions, I think that we need to have a review and to look at how we function in the public eye, in public meetings, to get the public's business done in a smooth and in a good way. As I said in my memo, we're never going to agree on everything, and there's never going to be a situation where there's going to be a 5-0 vote on nearly everything that we do. But we should not walk out of these meetings holding a grudge, or to get back at, or having a different agenda, and getting back at well, I'm going to get my way next time, because that's just not the way it should work. The public expects us to, I feel, to collaborate, to work together, to be their representative on their behalf in this community as a whole. I don't think the public likes to see what they see. I get these comments all the time from the public. I think that we can be different. I think that we can be better. Yes, I do think that the moderator probably is going to be hired at the county's expense for the county's benefit. I don't think it should be hired out of their own pocket, or the person should donate their time. I don't think it should.
I think it's a great idea, except it has to happen in January, not now.
That's right. That's right. Well,
I
I
don't-
don't.
I think it would be amongst the 5 supervisors that are sitting.
Absolutely.
So that's a discussion that needs to happen next year.
Okay, and that's fine. But that's just from my personal observation, Mark, and because I know that we have operated for a long, long time in a different manner, and it doesn't seem to be going in that same direction, as I said, within the last year and a half to a year. So I think that we need to look at that when we have these meetings in the public, and so that we can determine who we are, how we represent the public, and how we represent ourselves on our board as a group.
You know, and I did ask Ed if, from his point of view, culture-wise, as a county, you know, what he was getting complaints on, what the feeling was. I don't know if you can share any of that, but you know, a lot of times this is driven by HR, you know, within a business organization, and some, you know, maybe we just may need to beef up our policies, or maybe, you know, I don't know what this will look like. I just know as a long-term educator, I go back to reteaching. When things go awry, you go back and reteach behaviors, and that's the only thing I can think of. But I don't know if you could shed any light on this.
We do see some instances of workplace bullying, some things like that. We do see conflict within department heads, within departments. I think it's the nature of county government in general, it's a lot like herding cats. Like George was saying, you have a lot of autonomous people. There's not a single person that anybody has to answer to. So I think just in general, you do have reason for conflict. Some of the conflict is designed by law. It makes sense that there's going to be debate when we get to budget time and things like that, because the board of supervisors does have control. There's bound to be conflict, and that conflict doesn't mean that there shouldn't be just solid, positive debate. And I think that's one of the things we need to work towards. From my perspective, I'd like to see us have a stronger policy against retaliation. I'd like to see us have a little stronger policy prohibiting workplace bullying. And I'd like to see us have policies that promote more mutual respect, I guess, for everybody. I think as a whole, the county functions well. I mean, if you look at some of the awards that the county wins and different things on a national basis, we've got to be doing some things right. If you look at the gift, and I consider it a gift that we've been given with CF Industries, and this is $1 billion in assessed valuation that we're going to be able to add to tax rolls over the next 10 years or so, and that's huge. So we've got a huge responsibility that goes with that. I think there are things we can do. I know I did a lot of digging based on your recommendations, Jeff. You looked through some of the workplace bullying things. The statistics are kind of staggering. Workplace bullying causes a tremendous loss of productivity. It causes tremendous health issues, which of course drive up the cost of your health plans. I know some of the investigations that we've done since I've been here in a short time have shown cases where workplace bullying has led to severe heart issues, depression, anxiety, some things like that. I mean, these are ones that if I didn't have confidentiality in place, I could share with you, but they're real, they're there, and it was a direct result of workplace bullying. So there are some strides that we can make, there are some things we can do, and I'm here to facilitate. I'm here to help you guys however you want, in any way you want, and help you establish whatever's needed.
Ed, I'm going to have to cut off the discussion. This has been some very helpful discussion, and I think that we need to readdress it eventually soon, and I hope that the incoming board will basically do that. I'm going to have to move on to item number 5, which is the time set area. We have a public hearing on amendment to the Liberty Park Urban Renewal Area Plan. Dennis, you want to step up on that?
Okay, we're having 2 different public hearings here. The first one's on the amendment to the urban renewal plan. Every time we spend money within an urban renewal district, we have to have an amendment to the plan. This is not extending the boundaries at all. It's actually allocating some money for a capital investment project within CF Industries within the TIF district. So every time we do have a project, we're going to have a TIF amendment. And, there may be quite a few. The city has them all the time because, their plan changes all the time with new industry coming in, things like that. So in this case, this is for CF here, and it's $800,000.
Is there a motion?
This is to close.
Public hearing. Public hearing. Is there anyone to be heard? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for the public hearing to be closed.
Move it.
Discussion. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Item B is a resolution approving the 2014 Urban Renewal Plan Amendment, Liberty Park Renewal Area. Move it. There's a second.
Second. This money goes where?
This goes within the CF properties for a capital project of their choosing. It could be for the road. We're using RISE grant money. We're using, I think, $800,000 there to get to the entrance of the plant. From the plant on, this can help them with the road. It could help them with the railroad. It could help them with anything they're choosing within the plant for the capital investment.
Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, public hearing and development agreement on tax increment rebate agreement. Is there anyone to be heard in your audience on that?
Dennis, could you explain, when you have a public hearing, explain what you're discussing?
Okay, the public hearing on this situation here is actually approving the development agreement that the board verbally sent a letter saying, yes, we'll help you out with $800,000 within the plan. This is actually put in a formal document that's got to be approved by resolution.
Right.
This is a follow-up really to
The
the
previous
original plan amendment, yes.
Okay,
And
is there?
it actually puts in a formal letter resolution.
Right. Is there anyone to be heard? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move it.
Discussion. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Now we need a motion to make that legal, approval of the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, be authorized to sign.
Second.
Discussion?
This is actually a resolution you're approving,
Right.
which will authorize you to sign it, Mr. Chair. Yes.
Okay, discussion. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Thank you, Dennis. Anything
There'll be
else?
documents in the back room,
For
the
me to
signed
sign.
chair and the pad.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Item number 4, we'll go back to economic development. David Gleiser,
Morning Supervisors.
good morning.
Just wanted to bring forth to you this morning an application that I've received and been working on for our investment in Woodbury County Loan Program. We've received an application from Cyclone Properties, owned and operated by Dr. Daniel and his wife Sarah Murray. And this is for a proposed project. Oh, gosh. Is this the one that makes it large? I can't see it. There, thank you. Doing business as Sergeant Bluff Eye Care. Again, the application that I've received was for a $200,000 request from our county loan program for the construction of a new 7,000 square foot building to house an existing optometrist practice, which would occupy 4,000 square feet with additional space for rent to other tenants, approximately 2 at 1,500 square feet each. The project is located in the Pioneer Flats subdivision. Currently, Dr. Yule's practice is out of Sergeant Bluff. He's been open since 2010. Since opening, he has significantly grown his operations there to the point where he needs additional space and has outgrown his current lease space in the strip mall next to Fairway. The project is a $1.2 million investment. Currently has 6 employees. This project would generate 2 new employees. And Dr. Yule serves patients from over 90 different communities in 7 different states. And he is one of only 2 medical clinics located in the city of Sergeant Bluff. So this is the location of this project. If you're familiar with the Taco Dome in Sergeant Bluff, this is the field behind it. This land is actually, what I'm excited about this project is that this would occupy space that the city of Sergeant Bluff's fire department and rescue team have been practicing digging trenches and doing drills out of for the last 10 years. So there has been some issues with the ground, and I'm excited that Dr. Yule is willing to make an investment on this land because otherwise it may have not gone to use as it has over the last 10 years. This is a rendering of his new facility. This project will be generating roughly over $14,000 in new tax value for the city of Sergeant Bluff and $36,720 roughly for the county. So it's a significant investment and growth to our tax base, as well as creating a few new jobs. So it definitely meets the criteria for our loan program. And working with Dr. Yule and the city of Sergeant Bluff over the last 3 to 4 months on this project, We have put together a package of incentives. Dr. Yule will receive a tax rebate on his city levy. So he will pay his city taxes, but then he'll receive a full rebate on those taxes for the first 3 years. And he's requested to borrow $200,000 from us. His primary financing institution is Kingsley State Bank. Kingsley State Bank has informed me that they're willing to finance up to 75% of the project. Dr. Yule has a private borrower, private lender that will infuse him with $200,000. So what I would propose, or my recommendation to the board, would be that we would fill the gap in financing and only finance $100,000 at our 2%. His bank is lending him at 4.25. His private lender is at 4%, and we are at 2%. The original projection or request for the note was 10 years, and my recommendation would be to do 7 years. And if we were really wanting to be more aggressive in recouping our revolving loan fund dollars, I would make a recommendation of potentially 5. At 7 years, the cash flows are a little tight, but it does work. I do feel confident that this is a good investment for us and for the city of Sergeant Bluff. We do have a second position on all collateral assets. We have personal guarantees from Dr. Yule and his wife, and we also have corporate guarantees on his practice as well. This project, in my opinion, for the applications that come across my desk, has demonstrated the most potential and seems to be a very legitimate opportunity for us to come in, tie the loose ends on the financing, and make an economic project happen. So my recommendation would be to do the $100,000 rather than $200,000 and finance it at 7% or 7 years rather than 10.
Great discussion.
What are the timetables for the other lending sources?
20 years from his bank, and then the private lender is just 4% at interest only. So until making payments on that until it's paid off.
Thank you.
Other discussion? It's a pleasure to the board.
You're recommending this loan, I mean, we had that discussion.
Yes, sir.
And it's $100,000 for 7 years. And the collateral is signatures primarily.
Yes, we have second position on all collateral assets, and let's see here, I believe. Sorry, just because on my glasses on the Yes, Kingsley State Bank does have first position on all of the assets behind the $900,000. Yes, I tried to work out an intermediary lending agreement with the bank to get a first position on an additional piece of collateral, a percentage of the building, or a piece of equipment. Being in a gap lending situation, their policy is to not allow that. So essentially, I think this is a deal where we just need to find out what our level of comfort is in determining the risk versus benefit.
We have second position though.
Yes.
SEDC does SBA loans, and they're all second.
This is a very typical situation for gap financing.
And no banks are going to give you first.
No. But I do feel this is, Dr. Yule is very young. He's in his early to mid-20s. He has his practice is growing every year. with the additional retail space that it'll have, as well as he's forecasting to have 2 additional optometrists hired in the upcoming years, will significantly generate more revenue. And with the additional leasing spaces that he has, that's more opportunity to cash flow into his business. There is a note, an existing note on his debt load that will be paid off in 2019, which will significantly enhance his cash flows in the positive. So I feel confident that he'll be able to make payments during our note, and we should have no problems with this application.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move it.
Second.
Discussion? Dennis?
SADC did review this, as they do all of our applications, came back with a positive.
Recommendation on it too. I think
David,
it's-
I do have a question. So today, are you just asking for approval for the general terms? And then you'll come back with the development agreement and the formal documents?
Okay. And that's your motion and second. Okay?
It sure is.
Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll invite you to the ribbon cutting ceremony.
Please. All right. Let's move on to item number 6, and discussion and action on claims processing. Matthew, you have maybe a statement you want to make on that? You made the suggestion last week. I haven't had any feedback from any department heads on this myself. I'm just wondering if the other board members did. But your idea was good. I think it probably should be implemented. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. My idea comes from the observation that every week we approve, that since I've been here, $200,000 to over $900,000 in claims each week. To the average taxpayer, that's a lot of money when they look at the claims online and they don't see any sort of description for what we are paying for. I brought up the example last week of the thousands of dollars in hotel bills that don't mention the city or the reason or the person. I think also when we're dealing with the hardware company or as this week, there's several charges to Baumgars, some of them small, some of them quite large. We don't know what they're for. There won't always be department heads to address items of concern if we have a question on a claim. Just from my own investigation with the auditor's office, they can't tell me what certain unmarked claims are for unless we look at the individual claims, and that's something we don't do. And barring that, there really is no way to know if we're paying an electric company to know if the charge is for installation or for maintenance, unless we really research each one by one. And I think the public deserves to see that. So I asked Gene Jessen to prepare some handouts of what I'm talking about. And the highlighted area here is in the software module. And I think this is a simple step that we should take to increase transparency in the claims process. Basically, I would like to see a very short and sweet policy that has department heads or whoever puts in these claims to also put in a description for each claim. And I'm open to suggestions on how specific that needs to be, but there's only a limited block of space. I think if we're reimbursing an employee, we deserve to know what for. I think if we're paying for a multi-$1,000 claim, we deserve to know if it's for ongoing, something that's budgeted or something that has just come up. So the first page is what the highlighted area is what it would look like if it was included. Second page is what the employees would see as they put in the claims.
Gene?
There's the second page of that, there's a description line 1 and a description line 2 on those. And it would put on the edits. When we're putting those out there on the website, it would give the public a lot better description of what was happening. I just used myself in this instance where the mileage reimbursement would be for my trip to ISAC. It would take a few keystrokes to put those in at the department level for the people that are entering those, but it would be a lot better description for the public when they're actually going out and looking at those edits. It would give them a lot more detail than what we are providing now. Because Matthew's right, if the public were to come in, they're gonna have to actually look at that physical claim. You folks see the physical claims when we bring them in here if you have a question, but the public does not unless they actually make a special trip in. This would give them a little more detail. And again, have transparency where they would be able to see why I was getting a reimbursement for mileage, where I went, what that trip was for.
But it won't change anything when you publish the claims.
It will not change anything when you publish the claims. On the publication itself, what the people are saying, what they sometimes have questions on is, if there's a payment to Baumgars, when we publish that, it takes countywide as a total for Baumgars and publishes that. But this would give them on the edit the detail. So there are people that come in and say, how come we're paying Baumgars, or what are these? It could be, 100 claims across the county for small dollar amounts. So when they look at the publication, there are questions as well. It's not going to enhance that, but it would enhance what we're putting on the website for those folks to see on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Okay, when we discussed this with Mr. Young, we described it basically as a tweet. Is that you put it, how many characters in it?
I'm not sure, Pat.
It's small.
It's small.
I think it's smaller than a tweet.
Smaller than a tweet.
I never having done a tweet, I don't know how big that is, but,
That's 140 characters.
okay.
Okay.
Why don't you let me explain it to you?
But I guess, I don't think the departments probably understand what we're talking about at all. So what I would suggest is that we send out some sort of memo to them and asking for their input on that. But that is something, and then we can send out a directive, because it's simply a procedure in the claims process. Okay, so we can send that out with the board support if that's what they would like to see. But I think the first step would be if we send it out to the departments, the people who are entering the claims, and explain to them what we're talking about, and see what kind of input we have from them.
The impact, it's going to take them a few seconds longer.
Yes.
And so for the smaller departments, it's not really going to be a large impact, but the larger departments,
Because I'm sure they would be.
Therein lies my concern.
Right. Mark?
We process 100 to 150 claims in most claim periods. Even if it only takes her 30 seconds to type in that memo, we're talking about an hour plus added to our claims time each week. I don't have an objection to verifying claims for reimbursements and those kind of things. I'd like to see this tightly worded to, when we have new equipment, but Baumgars, we're buying antifreeze, we're buying windshield washer fluid, we're buying nuts and bolts. It takes time with all of that processing for that one individual to get it done in time to meet all the deadlines for the auditor. Typically, our process is we try and get those done Tuesday by 4:30. I take them home with me and review them at night, and then I bring them in the next morning just to save me a little travel time to and from Mobile. But for our department, with the number of claims we process, it would be a significant investment in time for that staff employee. And this comes right on, we do payroll first, and every other week, we follow that quickly with the claims process. Tightly controlled for things like new equipment purchased, maybe reimbursements for meetings. I'd like to see it narrowed to where we're not having to do this on 100 to 150 claims if possible.
and I have a suggestion possibly do that, and maybe the Tuesday deadline for you folks is usually what we use. But if you move that back and say, I'm going to have my claims done on Friday, I'm going to turn it in on Wednesday, and start that rotation, those claims are actually it's going to be basically the same rotation.
Friday is when our foremen come in and do the receiving of the claims. So that means by the time they get done with it, Tish begins to work on a Monday.
The sheriff's office has.
The sheriff's office, I would say, has the most substantial amount.
What about the Department of Human Services? The Department of Health. Are they?
The Department of Health, you folks don't look at, so those aren't actually encumbered
No.
in this process. But they would probably have the most, but they do those on a monthly
Yes,
basis.
they
But
do.
if you took this on a weekly basis, I would say the sheriff's department and secondary roads
Roads
would
be
be a
two
little
big
second.
departments.
And those two departments would be the majors, yeah.
Sheriff, do you have any thoughts on spending several more hours a week on?
I think what's ever easiest and for the auditor's office, if it makes it so
Well,
the public understands.
No, it's working fine for us, and after Supervisor Long suggested that, in order when they go through to look at that, he would like a better idea as to
And I think,
what that claim is for.
I think this was for the public,
Yeah,
more than anything.
Yeah,
Because when the public looks at those, they don't have detail.
right.
I mean,
because you've got questions about what those claims are for,
Yes.
so we're looking to publish it.
I think we can make it work. I mean, it's, yeah, obviously gonna be a little bit more, but it's, you know. if
it's
you
gonna
get-
enhance what the public sees.
Right, that's what's, I would agree, that's important.
And that's only on the website where they would see the
That's correct.
enhancement.
That's correct.
If they went out to
Not the newspaper.
not
No.
the newspaper.
No, and that was the other question. The reason that we combine all of those is first to keep the costs down and we only have to publish what we paid to a vendor. This, on the other hand, would give them that little bit of detail if they go out and look on the website.
So your recommendation is to send this back to the department heads, get their suggestions back for a policy or what?
I just want to make sure that the departments have a fair chance of understanding exactly what is being asked.
Okay,
Some departments do this of their own volition already. I realize it would be a little extra work for larger departments, but the claims packet we go through, if, you know, just looking at it, if you multiply the number of claims by a few seconds, it's, I think it's a necessary step in the right direction, just for.
So like, if we buy equipment at Sioux Sales or Jack's Uniform Shop, just a little blurb.
Uniforms.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's just a step. I think
Oh, that's,
you spend $7 at Bomb Guards, supplies is all right, you don't have to say.
Is there a way that perhaps that description 2 item, so we have dozens of item codes that are all tied to a specific bid item number in our budget. So for instance, if you're looking at our 220 account, we have an account for nuts and bolts. Would it be possible to adjust the program so that it pulls that budget item out? Or filters, or whatever is tied to that number, which would save that individual having to regurgitate basically both number and description.
Well, in your chart of accounts is a little different. However, when they're looking through those, they don't know if you bought nuts and bolts necessarily or what you purchased.
Yeah, I think what he's saying though is the heading from the program get pulled into that description.
Yes.
Yeah, just as we pull in, for instance, I know it's probably not the right number, 932, if that's filters. If we could pull that filters that goes along with that 4932, so that that wouldn't necessarily have to be typed in.
And actually, there isn't without a modification. Before we had this discussion, I made sure that there wasn't a way that programmatically we could do it without a modification. And there isn't at this point without actually manually typing it in. But I think all of those suggestions are valid, that maybe we go to the department heads and see what the outcome is going to be for their department to see if we can work around some of these situations.
And the flip side is I don't want to have to read a paragraph on every item.
No, and it's going to be a snapshot just like we have right
It's
there.
a tweak.
That's exactly what you're going to see.
It's very restricted.
It's very restricted.
But the comment that I was going to make is some of the departments that you referred to, Supervisor Elliott, is that they put it in there just for their own purposes, because when they go back to look for a claim, there's a description in there that they can find. Some departments already do that because that is helpful for them.
We're required to report to the DOT, so our claims process also summarizes to a very extensive Department of Transportation code of accounts, whether it's construction work or whether it is buying an air filter. All of those go to a specific account where the number code that you see in the second or third column corresponds to a specific account within our department, whether it's machinery fixtures or fax toner, or whether it's nuts and bolts
it's valid what you brought to us is that when you asked me, I couldn't tell you what that number was from the edit that we put out. That's a valid thing.
And again, I just
But check
look
it
at,
balance it.
So can we send this back to you so that we can work, because we're talking about the details now, and the
Right.
devil is always in the details. So can we send this back, so that we get the information from our county engineer and also from the sheriff on how we can more expeditiously and efficiently identify those things that we're talking about here?
I would be happy to send out exactly what you folks are
Right.
seeing and have the people that
Right,
actually input
and
those,
get the
see what
feedback
impact it's
from,
gonna get.
absolutely.
And attach.
Okay?
I had one more question. Jean, when you said that it would take a modification to pull the code, are you talking an IT modification, something within the programming?
It's a program modification we would have to pay for the software we're currently using. And I think what's unique with secondary roads is they actually are filtered down a little more descriptive, if you would agree with this, Dennis, where they have a gravel line item, and gravel is only used for gravel. Whereas in the rest of the chart that counts for the county, office supplies could encompass many items, whether it's just supplies or whether it's a purchase of a piece of equipment or something like that. So it would be it would be beneficial to have that small detail on there for everybody. So it's really there for the public to see.
So it sounds like you're gonna have to be working with John Malloy's department to get that programmed in.
No, actually,
You
that
are?
would be third-party software, and so
Oh.
for a modification, you're talking dollars to make that happen.
How much?
And with that said, I don't know if a modification would be 99% of the county when you look and compare secondary roads to the sheriff's department.
Mhm.
Personally, I think the actual modification to make it mandatory as far as you can't physically submit the claim unless it has it is a discussion after the discussion we're having. I think I would just like to see some step today, whether it's a motion or a resolution or just commitment to include more details in these claims, because it's troubling to me when the auditor himself can't tell me. Nothing against the auditor, but when we look at these claims, some of them quite large, and we don't know what we're passing.
Unless you look at the
Unless you look at the physical claim.
So how long would it take to run that by department heads?
2 weeks for the larger departments.
So we put it back on the agenda in 2
2
weeks.
weeks,
Okay,
that's the worst
is that
place.
the board's pleasure?
That work, yeah.
That would-
Okay, thanks, Gene.
Thank you.
All right. Item number B is discussion and regarding cell phones, Larry.
I just brought this up to see where everybody's at on it. We really don't have a policy on cell phones. And I talked to Gene, and people use it for everything under the sun, their cell phones.
The cell phones are actually budgeted under the department's budget. They purchase the phones that they need. Their package or what they use for the phones. A lot of the departments have smartphones, a lot of them don't, depends on what they actually do or utilize that phone for within their department. I think your question was, go ahead.
Oh, good. No, I was letting you finish, but I just wanted to give a little bit of history behind it, correct, and that's okay. Okay, right now you have a policy that's in your employee manual that talks about it. And the way cell phones came to begin with is when businesses and government started purchasing cell phones for their employees. They were listed property, which meant that you could, you tried to, and it became impossible, but you tried to keep track of what you use for business and what you use for person. And it got to the point where the IRS delisted that because they knew that if certain items lend themselves to personal use, and there was no way. It was costing a lot more to keep track of that than it was to try to force companies to do that. So that's what the policy followed, but that's what the county followed with that. And the IRS delisted those that type of equipment. So So what they said is departments, what your policy says is departments heads can determine whether or not to issue cell phones to employees in their department if they think it's necessary. That's pretty much what your policy says at this point. Then it's up to, then it also says that it'll issue a county phone to a person, or they can use their personal phone and be reimbursed. The reimbursed is the gray area, because it doesn't say what you're going to be reimbursed for. And I don't know how the departments, you can speak to that, Gene, but I know the Board of Supervisors, you passed a motion, I believe you passed a motion, is that you would reimburse the supervisors at 50% of their monthly cost. And that's as tight as it gets. Correct, Gene? Now, do any other departments have employees that are using their own phones that are reimbursed?
Just one, as far as I know, and that would be conservation. They're actually paying them.
We're gonna follow the city policy.
What is the city's policy? Could you step forward, please?
And identify yourself.
Rick Schneider, Director of the Conservation Department. I don't know exactly what the city's policy is right off the top of my head. And it's probably changed since last time we looked at it, but just this past year, we took a look at our cell phone policy in our department. We had been reimbursing basic cell phones for those that chose to keep their personal cell phone and choose the reimbursement option. And I think that was $30 a month. And most of them were getting smartphones and doing other things with it. So for smartphones then, we reimburse $50 a month. So no matter what their plan is, what they want to do, we have unlimited exposure or expense that we pay for that. We have the right to contact them 24 hours a day on that phone in exchange for that.
So Larry, are you thinking that we should set a policy for the board and reimbursement for either, your own
For
personal
cell phones throughout the county,
County.
they put a maximum on there. And I visited with Gene, he said 60 to 65 is pretty average.
That's the average phone, but again, it would depend on what they do to do their job for that area. So if you folks.
Like I'll just tell you, mine is usually between 63 and 65. I don't know why it changes a couple dollars every month, but for some reason it does. And that's half of my bill.
And
And when they submit a bill for payment, is it required, where is it that we?
when there was a dispute.
The entire bill is submitted.
Correct. When the board was discussing this, the entire bill is submitted,
Yes,
so there's
that's
actually
submitted.
documentation as to what your bill is and what we are actually
Yep.
paying you back for. And at that point, the board said 50% for board cell phones.
And that's why some employees like to go with the county phone, because they don't want to divulge who they're calling and that sort of thing, is when they do it.
And I don't think there's any other department that would supply a county phone, or if you use your own, you use your own. I think that's pretty broadly.
Yeah, we got rid of cell phones.
All right. So what's the pleasure of the board?
I just brought it up,
Item of discussion. I don't know.
I don't
It's
know.
been discussed. I guess there's going to be no decision made at this point. I guess
We'd like to revise the policy to include a maximum, is that your,
Is that your pleasure?
I don't have any pleasure. I use a county phone, so my bill is $49.
Yours are-
You
yeah,
have a flip phone.
But I don't,
I've seen your phone, Larry.
And we discussed that as well, because the majority of us are tied here 24 hours a day and we're using our email.
right, and I understand that. I just think we need to put a lid on it of some kind.
It's not a bad way to think. I mean, I don't know. It can get out of hand pretty easily.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, we'll move on then if there's not going to be a recommendation made or anything.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item 7, Dennis Butler, we're going to discuss funding requests for nonprofits, agencies.
Okay, Okay, the first item I'd like to discuss, because it all deals with budgeting here, is we've had a lot of requests on the nonprofits. And what I'm talking on nonprofits here is the nonprofits are funded with gaming revenues, not tax dollars. We have another category of nonprofits that's funded with tax dollars. So what I'm specifically addressing today is the ones that's funded with gaming revenues. We have a grant program here that the board adopted for the people to fill out that do want money from the county. And this is the process of just saying, let's get it started. The board, after, when they go through the public hearings, go on each individual budget category, they can come back and either accept it, delete it, or accept a few of them. But I think to give the people the opportunity that have been having it from gaming revenues and new people by saying, people, this is available for anybody that's a nonprofit 501c7.
Are you getting phone calls from
I've got a
nonprofits
couple,
wanting?
The board's got a couple, and a couple of them are new ones coming in.
So you're just wanting to know
If we can have consensus or action by the board to go ahead and send these out to the people who request and also put it on our website that money is available. You don't have to set a dollar amount at this point in time. In the past, we've allocated $74,650 to fund about 5-6 different programs. Now, when you send this out to the public and everybody has an opportunity to come back, you may have not 5 or 6, you may have 15 or 20. But you have more gaming revenues coming in because of Hard Rock contributing more money into this fund, that you may have the ability to provide more money to these nonprofits. And through the gaming, or through the program, grant program here, they have to specify why they need it, what do they need it for. They have to discuss if it's duplicating services of other agencies in town. It goes into pretty good detail.
So what you want now is the authority to send out, you know, the RFPs for this, these funds that would come out of gaming revenues.
Yes. And we have books made up that as soon as you say, we'll call them up. The ones that request it, come get them. And we'll put something on our website too, if that's okay. To let people know that's out there in the newsroom themselves can actually say, hey, we have this potential money here that could be available for nonprofits that provide public service to the citizens of Woodbury County.
I do have a couple questions. So, I forget what they are. Are you the contact person for questions?
Yes.
Is there a timeline on?
We had a timeline, but we've gone past that because we're kind of waiting to see how things progress here. And it's time to make a movement and give them, 3 weeks. That's enough time for us to get it back, put it in our budget workbook, and get it to you people, and then I'll review to make sure they fill out everything they need to fill out. If they haven't, we'll go back and help them get it filled out. If they can't fill it, then they're eliminated before it even comes to you if they can't fill it all out. And then it's gonna be up to the board. We'll make up a book with all the different applications, categorize them, and then give it to you, and then you guys make a decision.
And again, this is specific only to gaming revenue.
Correct. This does not include tax dollars such as for Sanford Center, Phoenix Program, County Fair. Those are the RFPs that they're developing now through the County Attorney's Office. They'll come back for approval from the Juvenile Prevention Committee, but it has to come back to the board to approve these RFPs also. And then we'll get those out. So there's 2 different categories of your nonprofits, tax supported and gaming revenues.
Okay. Other questions?
Do you have, with gaming, do you have a list of criteria that says, okay, these people are worthy, and these people are not so worthy kind of deal, versus, is it just gonna come back to the board and say, okay, we like them, we don't like them?
No, they will develop a point system, and it does say in here, there's about 6 different categories. I did have Joshua kind of review this. He came up with a couple of suggestions, so they're good suggestions. One of the main ones is that if you do grant them money, the board has the ability to go out and request an audit. It's in the code there, they can go out and do an audit. We can work together in conjunction with the audit officer, us, whatever, and go out and request, how did you spend those money? To verify they did spend it for what they told us we're spending it for.
I would say it's pretty general though, PJ. I know there's categories, but there's categories, but it's not nearly as specific as the one that we're working on for the prevention. That's much more specific than this one.
Okay.
Do you want a cap or on the dollars?
Like I said, we have done 74,650. When we drew this up, we just put an estimated 80,000. But you have the ability to take, theoretically, you take all the gaming revenue and put it in this pot. Or you take half, or you take part of it, or you don't have to give anything out. That's up to the board. But at least you get an idea of what services people are requesting, what agencies, what service they provide. Do they duplicate services? Is this an ongoing expense every year, or is this a one-time deal?
Okay. It's the board's pleasure.
Timeline would be about 3 weeks. So from the day, what's the day, December 2nd, be 3 weeks from the day they have to have it back. That still gives me about a week during Christmas, whatever, to get this book put together and bring back to you gentlemen and ladies.
Do we advertise it somehow? Or just
We
today is
haven't
the
done it.
notice, or
Today
how?
will be the notice either through the news media, and also we'll put something on our website.
Okay.
So the public can actually pull up our website, here's a grant program. We'd actually probably scan this in too, so they get an idea there, and they can just print it right off the website.
Okay.
We want to make it accessible as possible to everybody, not limit to 5 or 6 different groups.
Well, I'll move it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, just one more. I think this is going to be an interesting process to see what we get, and you know, be continually revising it. This is the next step. You know, we just had designated nonprofits last time. I don't know really what to expect as far as applications. So as long as we know that this is, I guess, a path to get to something more perfect, this is the next step in trying to tighten up the process, which the public, I think, has asked for, and we're attempting to do it. It may not be perfect yet, but the will is there. The intent, there's good intent, I guess.
We've never had an application form for them. They usually just send a letter in saying what they kind of do, and it's pretty short. This will be a lot more detailed.
All right, any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, I abstain.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is just general discussion and action on budgeting. In the past, the board has sent out a letter saying about 5 or 6 different criterias. Our tax base, we're pretty much finalized that. We're getting very close. In fact, it's pretty much there. We did have tax base growth of 1.6%, which is about countywide 57 million. In the past, we've actually sent out, and the board's agreed to, is either say on your the payroll and the fringe benefits are taken care of by the auditor's office, the payroll, and the human resource. Okay, they're all constant of the contracts, what they have to have in the contracts, the step increases, and then they put in the percentage there that's already going to be embedded in there. Department heads, elected officials really don't have anything to do with that. So what they're doing, everything below the line item of fringe benefit or employee benefits and salaries, everything below those are their operating costs. In the past, the board said you can hold it 0. We've done 2% increases, we've done 2% decreases. A thought this year is not really set a percentage on it. Ask the departments, what do you need? They're all constant, the money's tight. And if they aren't, the board will make sure they are constant when it comes back to the board. But to be realistic, what do they need to run their department? Down the road, we're going to maybe change some ideas how we get this information back to us. It's a short period of time now, but we need to get numbers back from these people. So, and then we also said no more new employees. If you haven't filled a position for 6 months, house, you may not need that position, so it should be determined if we need to budget it again or delete it out of the budget. So that's called vacancies there. There may be cases where there may have to be new employees, but I think in that position or case, we can put in the budget we have in the past, any proposed new employees, we have a line on there, we'll stick it in there, and then detail below that, because we have an option with the HT, our software vendor, where you put the money in the line item, hit a command, you go back, and then you can define everything you're doing in that category. Kind of get back to what Matthew was saying on the claims. There's a category where you do a description of what you're doing. We do ask that for travel, maintenance contracts, equipment purchases, things like that. So the board does have an idea, if you've got 10,000 there for equipment, what equipment are you buying? And then if it's it lasts longer than 5 years, sometimes we put that in our equipment replacement fund, which is funded by riverboat funds. So I guess what I'm asking today is, can we send out the budget request and say, money is tight, but put in what you really need to have to run your department. Now, we may come back with some
That
big
seems
numbers.
scary to me,
Well,
but I don't know.
Or put a percent in. The CPI this year is 1.7%.
Do you anticipate any kind of an overage as far as our budgets are concerned? I mean, a shortage of dollars, like last year, fiscal year, we were looking at about a $2 million shortfall.
Right.
And we were at a $3.50 per thousand limit as far as funding these programs out of the general fund. And we still can't go over that. Are we at that? Are we still at that specific limit, Dennis?
We are at the 350 cap. We've been there ever since I've been around. That's quite a few years. We've always been at the cap in general basic. Then what you can fund in general supplementals, other things are required by law that we can take out of, like fringe benefits for all employees and general basic we can levy out of there. We're gonna have some good instances this year. Our lawsuits are down. You know, there's been procedures implemented that we have decreased them. And there's been steps taken by other departments to help out on that. So we may be able to reduce our liability contribution, because we had to move it up quite a bit because we just weren't funding appropriately to keep it where it was a stable reserve, just like our health insurance fund. There's potentially a health insurance holiday coming. That could help us by $350,000 to offset taxes there. Other ends, we don't have a general election to pay for. We'll have a primary, but that's a lot less cost.
Well, I think that you should send that notice out to the department heads and to the other elected officials. But I think that if they are going to ask for additional employees for the departments, that's got to be tied to, as you say, justification for those additional employees, and it's got to be crucial to that department's operation. If it's not crucial to that department's operation, if they can get by without additional employees, because it's very difficult to, since I've been here anyway, we've really not laid off anyone from various departments unless it comes from the recommendation of that particular department. I can only think of one department where that's happened. But to me, if they come in and says, I need an additional clerk or whatever, that position has to be critical to the operation of that particular department and to providing services. If it's not, then I think it should be not put on the budget or eliminated. That's my feeling.
You know, when they have positions, are they positions that are mandated to provide the service to the taxpayer? Or
Right.
are they non-mandated to provide some service that isn't really required? They need to find that out. And also, is there a potential they have revenue coming in? Examples are the CAP program, 24/7. I've talked with the sheriff, county attorney on this. There's potentials there for additional revenue that are other than taxation. Those are things we have to look at. We have to try to get new ways of generating money without keep constantly going back to the taxpayer.
I know we can't go with the general fund, it's $3.50 limit, but the supplementary, general supplement, that's still, if we go into that, dip into that, we're still raising the taxes of people in the county.
That's unlimited, but we can also go over the cap.
Yeah, and I don't want.
It takes an extra hearing.
Yeah.
There are 23 counties that have gone over the cap, but they're
I
very
don't think
poor
there's
counties.
any interest.
No, there isn't.
I don't think there is either, but legally we can. You have to know all the facts here that you can do it. I don't think there's a consensus to raise taxes like that. So it's basically getting back to what is needed, prioritize, services are needed. This is something we talked about, and we need to probably do it.
Well,
So
there's-
basically, you're asking to send out a letter indicating to the various departments, send your budgets in, be reasonable. We know what you probably want, but what do you actually need? That's the real deal.
And just so you know, you have approved out of reserves this year, nurses for the jail. It's been proven they do need them. This is gonna be an additional expenditure next year that's out of the general basic fund. We're probably talking $200,000-300,000 that we can't levy for. So the instance is, we gotta generate new revenue. We can't generate more taxes. So either you gotta cut services somewhere, prioritize service where you cut them, or we get some of these programs going where it'll help tremendously. It'll take a while to get them implemented, see the flow of revenue coming in, but if we can get it started, we can see some of that flow next fiscal year.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? Additional discussion?
I think you send them a letter.
Okay.
Now, do you want a cap put on their operational costs, or just send out a letter and see what happens?
No,
Then you want a cap.
I do.
I don't.
Okay, you're good.
Well, I think the cap is if you don't need it, you don't get it.
Right. The ultimate decision, if, say they come
If you
back-
send out 2%, they're gonna go 2%.
They're at 2%, yes. And I guess you gotta have faith in your department as an elected official, obviously. They're gonna be constant, they know what the times are. They know times are a little better, but they know they've heard through many different various sources that we are limited what we can tax. So to generate new revenue, or the board have to make some decisions down the road. But I think you need to find out what these people really need, then we gotta prioritize, then you make your non-mandated cuts.
Okay.
And
Jack?
just for review, the
Yes.
last years, I mean, we have held the line, I'm trying to,
You've
in
been
my
2%
mind.
down, you've been 0, and you've been 2% up.
So basically, there's been little growth. I think we've held the line, I mean, there's been, actually probably have fallen behind. I mean, because 0
Yeah, it's
is
hard to-
falling behind.
It's hard to put a percent on too, because I'll give you an example like the jail here. How do you give them 2% when we already know for a fact we're gonna have stronger medical costs, we're gonna have stronger nursing costs that weren't there the previous year, then how do you limit them to 2%?
Yeah.
You can't do it. They have to have it to provide the service for incarceration. And there are costs when you do that. And it's true in every office.
Okay.
So,
I just think it'll make our job much more interesting
Yes, it will.
in January.
Matthew?
Oh, I'm interested to hear what we get back.
Okay.
I think it's a good challenge for all departments and elected officials personally, because they know it's been tight every year.
All right, send a letter out then.
Okay.
Roll the dice, Larry, roll the dice.
Let's see what we get. Anything else?
One other thing. I do have the public hearing set for next Tuesday. You passed the motion to do that. We're probably gonna have to postpone the hearing, but we have to do that at a board meeting. I talked with Joshua. We're gonna do it at the board meeting next week to postpone for 1 week.
That was for a budget amendment,
Budget
right?
amendment number
Okay.
1. Because what I'm trying to do is get all the numbers in that we know for a fact we need in the budget. So when we do the workbooks, we have those numbers in the workbooks so the board can see
Absolutely.
actual numbers, such as the nursing, medical costs. There's several other things. The ambulance, we agreed with Sioux City to cover them this year, the next year, that's gonna be another discussion for countywide ambulance service.
Okay.
So that way the public knows that I'm gonna come back, we're gonna have a motion to move it to the following Tuesday, so everybody doesn't come in here next Tuesday expecting a public hearing, then we postpone it, because there may be people who wanna show up.
Excellent.
They'll just move it to the next week.
All right. Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 8, Weed Commissioner.
Hi, Jared.
Hi.
Fine.
I don't think we have the problem with weeds now, do we? Yeah, right. Go ahead.
Is there any questions on it?
On the report?
On any of the weed reports?
I don't
Move to accept it.
Your
Thank
second?
you very much.
One item I'd like to add is, you're talking about new equipment. One thing that you will see in the budget for the week next year is a replacement for the 3/4 ton pickup they've got. It's a 1990 something. The large V8 in it that gets very poor fuel economy. And that's typically what he goes to get parts for.
Yeah.
We have a larger spray truck that is, we know it's going to take more gas, but he doesn't take that around when he's getting parts for a pump or whatever else, other business he's got going to meetings and such. We will be needing to take a look this year at securing a new pickup for the weed eradication.
Okay, all right.
You don't have one in secondary roads you can use?
We do have pickups in the road department. Most of ours are 3/4 ton except for the foreman's pickup. Those are all half tons that get a little better fuel economy. We could hand me down from our department, but then that would mean we'd have to put something to ours to replace. Again, I don't know that trading an old 3/4 ton for a slightly newer 3/4 ton is going to do much for him. It would be one where the weed department would have to buy it from us as well, because it's a matter of the two budget categories, one not paying for the other.
Okay.
That's a discussion we're requesting that we have this year, because
Okay.
the truck is aging.
All right, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you, Jerry.
Then this requires George's signature
Okay.
before he can turn it into the department bag.
Okay. I'll get this back to you.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay, item number 9, we have John Moore. Yes.
Before John gets here, one more thing. It's been pointed out, we had discussion and action on both those items I talked to you about. Do we need a motion by the board on both those actions?
To get the letter out
Well,
to
first,
the
no,
various
It's
departments?
just a discussion on the budget process. I just told you to go.
so overall, we don't need a vote. Okay.
All right, thank you. Item number 9, John, talking about a telephone DHS.
Hello, Chairman.
How are you?
Wow. What we have in place today are five bids for the DHS replacement phone system. This is the last phase of the phone system replacement. Once this is all tied together, and again, this is the last component, we put an RFP out together. This one was a little bit different. And we have 3 local vendors and a vendor from Sioux Falls and a vendor from Des Moines. Submit bids, and it looks like they all did. What I'd like to do is open the bids today, and there are alternate pricing. I'd like to open them today and then
Bring them back later for a recommendation.
next week. So,
Go right ahead.
first bid I have is from Telesystems. And the bid amount is $59,225, $59,225. No, there is an alternate, go ahead. We were guesstimating in the 50 to 60,000 range, so we're guesstimating. There's 75,000 budgeted, so.
Okay.
There is an alternate bid for 52125, 52125. And I'd like to publicly thank Josh Woodman for his help and put this RFP together. So. Second one is from SDN Communications out of Sioux Falls. Bid amount is $74,704, 74704. Third one is from Quality Telecommunications Company, Sergeant Bluff.
What's the name of the company?
Quality.
Quality.
Quality Telecommunications Co. We actually have 3 bids, and there were some alternate prices. The low one is $42,832, $42,832. The second one is $47,587, $47,587. The third one is 53-243, 53-243. The fourth one is from Electric Innovations here in Sioux City. The bid amount is $79,520.96, so $79,520.96. Carrying your letter opener doesn't work in a box. The fifth proposal, the last proposal, is from CEC out of Des Moines, CEC out of Des Moines. And I'm having a hard time finding their $80,507.96, 80507.96.
Mr. Chairman, I move these bids be referred to Mr. Malloy for recommendation next week.
Okay. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Young. Discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, move on to item number 10, and that's the City of Sioux City, Glenn Ellis. Make a presentation to us on the utility easements.
We're usually much more prompt than.
Yes, we are. I mean-
You know, you usually are. You usually are.
Good morning, Board. I'm
Good
Glenn
morning.
Ellis. I'm the city
Hi,
engineer
Glenn.
for the city of Sioux City. Today, we are discussing permanent and temporary construction easements along Venus Drive. That would be affecting your properties along Zenith and Hamilton. This project that the city is constructing is related to the I-29 utility work or planning work, and the city needs to relocate water lines and sanitary lines out of the DOT right away. And so, as it relates to that, the water line on Zenith Drive will need to be relocated. And these easements are to protect the interests of the water line and then also for the contractor to get on the property and to construct the water line.
When's work gonna start on that?
We're hoping to go to bid in February and construction starting towards the end of March.
And how long, let's get to the end of March then. I know that you've worked quite closely with Patty Harrison Putman, because that's gonna affect our building out there, and we're gonna be losing a few, originally anyway, parking spots. And you've worked with her, where I think you're gonna be able, we'll be able to accommodate each other on that, and
Correct.
I
Yeah,
do
with the-
appreciate that too.
Yeah, with
That's
the
really
installation
necessary.
of the, sorry,
Go ahead.
with the installation of the water line and the temporary easement along Zenith, we will need to impact the parking spaces. So we've worked with Patty to find alternate parking during that period of time. So while the contractor will be in there, it won't be the entire construction period. It'll only be during the time frame that the water line is being constructed that the parking will be relocated to the north side of the building.
Anything else? Questions that the board may have? Now, will the easements be permanent once, this infrastructure's been put in place there?
No, the easement along the Veteran Affairs building
Right.
would be temporary, so only
Okay.
during construction.
So that will revert back to the county once
Correct.
the construction is finished?
And then the parcel that's on the northeast quadrant of Hamilton, near the Jiffy Loop, that will be a permanent once the water line is constructed.
Okay, okay. I don't know if I have any other questions. Does the board members have any other questions on it?
Jonathan, did you see these, Joshua?
Yeah, I did do a quick review of it. In reviewing the legals or anything like that, I'm sure that they did their work on that. The only thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is the waiver of compensation, which is what they're asking for, and I think that
I don't see any problem with that.
Well, I think we need to take action on all three of these items, A, B, and C, so.
I'd move on A.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Item B is approval of temporary construction easement on
Move it.
Zenith Drive. Okay.
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Item C is discussion and approval of waiver of compensation for Zenith Drive and improvement on projects. Your second.
Second.
Discussion. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Sharon, the only thing I would ask is after they're signed, if you call me, I'll come pick them up and I'll get them recorded at the same cost. All right,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you. We appreciate your collaboration and patience. Really do. Thank you. Okay, our last item is the hearing of any individual wishing to make a presentation on item 9 on the agenda.
George?
Yes.
I'd like to go back to your discussion of county workplace culture. I think it's an excellent idea because there has been, a lot of discussion, a lot of upheaval, not just with the board, but with other elected officials. And if we can get them to buy in, I think that's what we should do. That's right.
And I think January, but in the meantime, if we can start thinking of who might be a good mediator or facilitator, I have no ideas on my end, but just kind of put it out. I think someone not local,
Right.
someone that can look
Outside
at us.
community, get a fresh look at, our environment. I think that's
And
very important.
we might need to have some way to contact the other elected officials, see if there's interest in it. The auditor,
Okay.
treasurer,
Well,
sheriff.
that's gonna be up to,
I know,
the next
going, but
board,
I mean,
not to me.
if it, we all need to buy into it or
Absolutely.
be spinning our wheels.
Because we're talking about relationships, and I think we need I think the protocol needs to be set, and I think that we can look at ourselves and self-evaluate ourselves here, so.
Do you have any thoughts, Ed, anymore?
I'd be happy to make some contacts. There are a number of mediator services that are out there, people that are used to dealing with similar kind of situations. And I do think we need to bring somebody in from outside so they don't have a possibility of bias. So I think it would be in everybody's best interest if we could do that.
And riverboat funds maybe could be used so that it's not tax dollars. I mean, that would be I just throw that out there.
I mean, it makes sense. I can at least get a list put together so that everybody can kind of review it and kind of see, when we can wait till January.
Yeah, see if we go forward with it.
At least we'd have some background, some homework done. I'm here at your direction, so are there any questions or anything that anybody would like to see?
Any questions? I don't think I have any questions. I just keep going back to, as a community, we really rallied around the anti-bullying for our youth. And at that point in time, I think it was recognized that we adults have to set the model. So I just reiterate that we are the leaders and we need to model good behavior.
Absolutely. I think anytime the board sets the example and sets the tone, it filters down to the county.
Starts from the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes good sense.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move it.
Mark, are we going to,
I was gonna go look for David.
good.
So overwhelming that after a while, it's just, you have to almost just trust. There's just no way, there's just so